Chapter 8, The Sole Survivor. Rita and I were at the end of our relationship. She just had way too much baggage. She was too insecure, jealous, also physically and verbally abusive toward me, and I took it for about a year. After a year of being beat on and talked down to, I couldn't take it anymore. I decided to move on, and I immediately got focused on my plans. I chilled with Jada P in Hunts Point one day, and we headed over to Satani's house. My father was there. I hadn't seen him since the Chris Rock show the year before. He pretended to be concerned about me, but I was reluctant to lower my defenses around him. I didn't like him. I certainly didn't trust him anymore. Days later, Rita calls me and says, "I'm pregnant." I said, "Pregnant? Since when?" She said, "I don't know, but we can go take a test if you don't believe me." I knew it was just a ploy to get whatever little time left she had to be in my presence. Rita already had a 3-year-old little girl named Jada that I adored. I said, "Okay, in the morning, we're going to go up to Bronx, Lebanon, and you can take a test there." The next morning, we went to Bronx, Lebanon on Fulton Street, and I stayed outside just thinking. She came outside with the doctor. The doctor held the pregnancy test up and showed me. Sure enough, she was pregnant. I fell flat on my back onto the concrete. The doctor helped me up and asked me if I was all right. I asked her if she could show me the stick one more time and explain to me how it works. She said, "Come inside, I'll explain to you both what to expect in the upcoming months and what you're going to need to do." We left and headed over to Satani's. Now, more than ever, I needed to catch a lucky break. It was 2002. I was 26, expecting a son, and I wasn't getting any younger. I'd never stopped writing, and with everything I'd gone through, I had a lot to say. The rapper 50 Cent was blowing up, and I'd heard he was making money touring just off of a mixtape. I needed a mixtape. I left my foot messenger job across the street from the World Trade Center at Deutsche Bank a year before the planes hit, and was now working at Rite Aid on Fordham Road. Sidebar, this ain't in the book. The crazy thing is, I was working at Deutsche Bank a year before the planes hit, and I went into that building every single day. It was part of my duties. And I would see this girl there. You know, I had like a little crush on her. I never said nothing. She was just beautiful. She had this almondy caramel skin, long black hair. She worked behind the desk, like right in the lobby. And you know, like after the planes hit or whatever, you know, I always regretted, like I should have said something to her, and I always wondered if she was okay, you know. But then like years later, I saw her on Making the Band, working with Puff. You know, she was like one of his assistants or something like that. So it was like, wow, there she go. Wow, that's her. Like, oh, snap. Like, I'll never forget that. Like, she was so beautiful. And I just like always wondered. And that was like a relief to see her on my TV. Like, wow, she made it, you know? And, you know, it's sad because, you know, my uncle, you know, he's not my uncle by blood, but it was my Aunt Deborah's boyfriend. You know, Aunt Deborah, sleep in peace. You know, she passed on too. This was like years later though. This was maybe I can't remember the year my Aunt Deborah passed, but that's not what I'm talking about anyway. My uncle was with my Aunt Deborah before I was even born, so I grew up with him, and he was like my uncle. And he passed. His name is Irvin Vincent Gillard, and he was the head of security. He actually was working on unionizing the security department for the officers, so they would have a union, and but he didn't make it. He fell in the buildings. And also my neighbor Helen. I don't know if she lived on the second or the third floor in my building. I lived on the fifth floor. She had just had a baby. So by now, this is 2025, so her baby is probably 24, 25. I don't know. But she had just had the baby. And, I went over to the point, that's Hunt's Point, and, I saw her whole family, in the building waiting to hear some word of what happened to her, and it's like, to see all of them, it was like it's a Honduran family. It was just so many of them just waiting to get word. She lived in the apartment like right by the steps. You go to the right, her apartment was right there, either on the second or the third floor. I don't remember. But, like I said, her daughter's probably 24 or 25. And if her daughter gets to hear this, like, your mother, she was so cool, yo. She was cool. Like, we wasn't tight like that. It was always a high and by type situation. But she always, like, took, like, a few seconds to, like, kick it with me and my brother. We lived in the same building. We was all, like, around the same age. So, I don't know Helen's last name, but, I just want to say, I'm happy to hear that the girl that worked behind the counter, I'm happy to hear that she made it and she's alive and well. And I also want to give condolences to Helen's family and say, Helen, sleep in peace. And I also want to say to my Uncle Vincent, man, I ain't going to get into it right now, bro. Irvin Vincent Gillard, sleep in peace. I wanted to get started on making my mixtape. Only problem, where would I make this mixtape? I had no studio access and I didn't make a whole lot of money. I kept working at Rite Aid and stayed focused on making my mixtape. I called my father and told him Rita was pregnant, hoping for some assistance or at least some advice. Neither happened. I got introduced to an engineer named Triple X down in the Lower East Side. He had a dope setup. X turned his bedroom into a full-fledged studio and used his closet as the recording booth. We made our introductions, including his pit bull, Red, and I got right to it. Time is money. I was nervous, but I was ready. I'd written the whole mixtape to various beats, rehearsed till I had no need for my notebook. I had it all down packed. I freestyled the intro. I wanted that to be natural. It had been almost 4 years since I'd been in the booth. It's how I know I have a gift from someplace special. Whatever's inside me, it's always been there because it rose to the surface while I sat back and just let it take over. I ran through 10 songs in 4 hours. It was a 16-track mixtape. I'd have to come back to finish the rest. I couldn't believe my ears. After I left, I went to 96th Street in Manhattan to see my little brother Keith and his mother Pam. I hadn't seen her in a long time, so we caught up with each other and I told her I was working on some music. I let her hear what I had so far, and she was super impressed. So impressed, she believed I could make it. I told her it wasn't finished and to not tell my father what I was doing. We talked about everything. She told me how she wanted another child, but she wanted my dad to be the father because she'd only given birth to my brother and wanted her children to have the same dad. I felt her on that. I knew I wasn't going to be like my father, having a bunch of kids all over the place. I saw the effects of siblings living in separate households firsthand and the distance it created. I told her I was expecting a baby from a girl I didn't want to be with, and she reminded me how, no matter what, I always needed to be there for my child because I knew exactly how it felt to grow up without a father. She knew she didn't have to remind me. Pam loved and respected me. She always reminded me of how special I was, and for that, I loved her right back. I told her, "Ma, trust me, I'll never leave my kid. I couldn't. It's not in me. No matter what, I'll give everything to make sure my kid turns out better than I did." She said, "I know you will." We chatted a little more and I headed out. As I was walking out, Pam stopped me at the doorway and said, "I know music. Even if your father doesn't want to help you, you're still his son. You're the son of a hip-hop legend, and you're good. When your CD's done, bring me a copy. I'm already in love with that one song, Wherever We Are. I like that one." I laughed and said, "Okay, I will," and headed out. I went to the Lower East Side the next day to finish up my mixtape, and I'd written one more song the night before to let off my steam. The song, Let It Out, was for my father. I redid my intro because when I started the mixtape, I got the idea to call it Destroy and Rebuild from my cousin Ramel during one of his many God body lessons. I kept that title and added The Soul Survivor, SOAL, because when Pam called me the son of a hip-hop legend, I felt it. I put a meaningful stamp on me and I ran with it. The Soul Survivor, Volume 1, Destroy and Rebuild. I got the Volume 1 part from Jay-Z's In My Lifetime, Volume 1. My first mixtape was done. I'd already been scouting out places to duplicate my CD and settled on Media Outlet Solution on 135th Street in Harlem. I did a white label sticker with my name and the name of the CD. It was wonderful. I could not contain my excitement. I had 100 copies of my ideas, thoughts, and creativity. I took nothing and had made it into something. As I was headed to the train station carrying my box, somebody stopped me and said, "Yo, what you got there, youngster?" A Harlem dude. Harlem dudes are mad loud and are always talking about what they've got, whether it be money, cars, clothes, or anything of some sort of vanity. My cousins from Harlem were no different. As I got older, I stopped looking at it as a bad thing. It's kind of what forced me to stay on my fresh and get money, just in case I came across a Harlem dude and had to defend myself. "What you selling, CDs? Who you got? Clue? Ron G? Hurry up, shorty, I ain't got all day." "Nah, this is me. This is my music." "What? That's you? Fuck is you? Some sexy R&B singer? Fuck you do, rap?" "Nah, man, I rap. I just rap." "Alright, let me hear something." What? Right now?" Yeah, right now. I want to see what I'm buying. When he said buying, I was like, wow, in my head. I put the box down and I spit, done talking. As I was spitting, more people came. The more people came, the harder I went. Before I could even finish, the dude cut me off saying, "All right, shorty, don't give it all away." He yelled to the crowd that had gathered, "My man's selling his CD. Y'all know he got it. He about to blow up." He leaned in and whispered, "What's your name?" "JayFlo." "Where you from?" "The Bronx." "My man JayFlo from the Boogie Down Bronx about to sign his deal, and you can have it before it blows up. $5 a piece." He reached in the box, and as he collected the money, he threw it into my box. When the crowd dispersed, I had $85. I tried to give the dude some money, but he gave me $5, grabbed the CD, and said, "Good luck, JayFlo from the Bronx," and walked off. I'd taken nothing, turned it into something, and turned that into money. I headed home so I could put my CDs in their individual cases in preparation of my sales. I'd been taking good care of Rita throughout her pregnancy. I never missed any prenatal appointments, gave her money, fed her, and we went to the movies every single week. She'd stopped smoking weed and cigarettes like we agreed, and I was so proud of her holding things down while I was so busy making moves. We walked up the block to the park, sat there, and just talked. I asked her about her next appointment and went to get something to eat, and I walked her back to the house. When I left her, I had two things on my mind: my car and a better job. Oh yeah, and selling my CDs, which wasn't going well. I quickly figured out what the problem was with selling my CDs. One afternoon, an episode of The Cosby Show that I'd seen plenty of times before was being reran. Cliff Huxtable made an analogy, attempting to explain something to Vanessa. He had her fiance, Dabness Bricky, imagine being served all his favorite foods on a garbage can lid. It was a metaphor about presentation. All my songs were great. Anyone who heard them loved them. But I had a white sticker on CDs with black typing in a clear vinyl case. I knew I needed to step it up and take things seriously if I wanted to get in the game. I'd kept this dope picture of my nephew Bishme and came up with the idea to use it for my album cover. This was it. I was stuck on using this picture. Only way I wasn't using it is if Satani told me I couldn't. I didn't want to call because I needed it too bad. So a couple weeks later, I just went over to her house. I knocked, she opened the door, saw it was me, said nothing, and walked in the house. She didn't close it or lock it, so I assumed it was okay for me to come in. Little Bishme saw me and immediately hopped up, caught me with a flying kick, and ran off laughing. That shit hurt. I thought to myself, damn, I'm getting old. How'd I let him catch me like that? He was about 4 years old at the time, but man, was that a hard-ass kick. I chased him and we started play fighting. After a little while, I knocked on Satani's bedroom door, walked in, and said what's up to Big Bishme. We all started talking and stuff, and finally, I decided to ask for what I came for. Bishme was cool with it instantly. I think Satani was too, but she wanted me to sweat. I always felt she held resentment after I exposed her money triangle scheme. She gave me the okay, I chilled a little bit longer, said bye to everybody, pushed my nephew to the floor, and I was off. I had the idea and knew what I wanted as far as my covers, but had no idea how it worked. And it was too expensive to get my cover designed by the printing company, so I called the smartest person I knew. Former DDT member, my cousin Monroe. He knew exactly what to do, so I sat back and watched him work. He clicked this, copied that, colored here, and when he called me into the room to look, it was beautiful. My nephew in the center, surrounded by my name and the mixtape title, gave it that official look I was hoping for. It was straight dope, but to me, it was missing something. This was my product, and I needed to give myself every advantage I could use to sell it. In hip-hop, it's this thing called a cosign. And around this time, it was becoming very popular. The N for the music business. All the top entertainers had one. 50 Cent from Jam Master Jay, Eminem and Snoop from Dr. Dre, and many others. I said, Moreau, type this in the bottom right-hand corner. Son of the legendary Grandmaster Flash. He got hyped and said, oh, hell yeah. It was done. I tried to pay him, but he wasn't having it, so we spoke a little longer and I left. I got it pressed up in the new format and went to go see Pam in Manhattan. I showed her the prototype of the mixtape and how it would look in its new format once the order was done. Instead of a white label sticker, I got the title and my name lasered right on the disc. She was so proud of me. We talked and she asked if my dad was going to help me get a deal. I said, no. She said, well, did you talk to him about it? I said, yeah, for years. We both laughed. She said, well, I'm going to talk to him because he should be helping you. I chilled a little while longer playing with Keith. Cooking was never her favorite thing, but whenever I came over, she'd whip up something so I wasn't running on an empty stomach. I was a grown man, and in a few months, I was going to be a father. I went out to Central Islip, Long Island, to my dad's house. Most of the time, whenever I stood right in front of my father, I felt like I wasn't standing there, like he couldn't see me. As usual, he had to run and couldn't stay long. I just wanted to talk to him. I had so much on my mind. The baby, my mixtape, Rita, just a lot. He didn't have time. It was what it was.